Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at VinArmani is my handle there. We're proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can check out all of our audio archives by going to activistpost.com. You can also check us out on dozens of terrestrial radio stations as well as satellite and the internet by going and visiting the Liberty Radio Network at lrn.fm. Tons of great content there, along with many of the top shows that are coming out of the Live Free or Die state, New Hampshire. So it's Monday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we are back. Have a great show for you today. I just got back from Pork Fest, and I am still recovering, so we'll see if the show actually goes the distance today or if I crap out at some point. But luckily, I already recorded the interview for today with Curtis Stone, also known as the Urban Farmer. He's the founder of Green City Acres, and he's coming back on the show. This was a really, really great interview, very inspiring, and I think goes straight to a lot of the ideals that were on display at Pork Fest this last week of self-sustainability, cryptocurrency, agorism, really freeing the market and freeing people. So we have so much to talk about. So we've got a first hour. We're gonna jump into all of those topics. And by we, I of course mean the gentleman who's here as always to help me get through all of this today. My good friend, co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. So as I told you, I'm still recovering from Pork Fest.
Nice.
So I did a panel on Thursday. It was like a new movers panel. And then on Friday, I had my main talk, which was at 11, but then got roped into some other things. So wound up on a crypto panel in the evening, several little interviews, got in on some podcasts as well. And then Friday night, just decided that I was going to go hard in the paint and wound up not seeing anything on Saturday because I was basically just laid up in bed, feeling bad. But I mean, I went about it the right way. I had been told that you could get, as opposed to doing like, last year I stayed and there's a little, I like a motel type of situation, like not too shabby, but like little suites or whatever nearby. It's pretty much walking distance, but maybe like a quarter mile. That's what I did last year. This year I was like, no, I'm going to stick around because if I decided to drink anything or whatnot, like I always had to leave and get back if I felt like, oh, maybe I might be starting to get drunk, and then I'd just be stuck in my room for the rest of the time. So this time, got a campsite because it's a whole camping thing. But I was not going to do a tent. It always rains, I was like, this is not for me. I'm not going to be doing all of that. So I found a place here in New Hampshire, and they were providing some trailers for other people too. I got like a 26-foot trailer, which they actually drove to the location, set it up and everything. So when I got there, it was just ready for me to walk right in. It was all set up. And then when I was done, they just came and they got it.
Oh shit!
So I was laid up in bed, but I was very comfortable. Let's just put it like that. I was very, very comfortable. So unfortunately, though, I missed a lot because Saturday was like Ben Swan speaking, Jeffrey Tucker speaking.
Man.
Let's see what Backwards performed. I missed that. I heard it, like I could hear it. I was like, that's backwards, but I'm not going to get out of bed. So, and then left on Sunday. But so there were quite a few things. You have to come next year. You absolutely have to come. I'm going to tell. It was interesting this year as opposed to last year. This year was, while there's always a pretty big crypto contingent there, this year it really felt like that was much more of a focus for a lot of the attendees, and that there were people there specifically, like I encountered a lot of people who were specifically crypto heads, and that was the reason they were there.
Nice.
And so, and that's different. But so there are a few things. Obviously, it was super cool walking around, seeing the free market in action.
In action.
I felt a lot more comfortable there this year for sure, just because over the last year I've gotten to know so many people. So that made a huge difference.
Yeah.
I was able to do quite a few transactions with crypto, but what I did see was that there is now, and I think it's a brilliant opportunity actually. A brilliant opportunity
Hmm.
is there were a lot of the vendors who have been there for years and years and years. I mean, this was the 15th Pork Fest, right? So Pork Fest has existed and been in operation yearly longer than Bitcoin has even existed.
Right.
So there were vendors who had been there for a very, very long time who it was like they still didn't take crypto. They took
Hmm.
cash. Some of them would take silver, right? So they'd take silver coins, no problem. They didn't take crypto, and it was like that was the one thing as I walked around that I could definitely see. These are people who are ideologically aligned, who are the prime sort of. These are the prime individuals who it should be easy to get them to onboard, and quite a few people who
Yeah.
maybe if they weren't onboarded, at least the Dash guys were there, and so they were onboarding people. And AnyPay, which is the point of sale, they were there and they were doing this thing Dash back, which people were crazy about. Like if you bought a $5 purchase with Dash, they would like AnyPay is sending back $5 in Dash back to you. So
Nice.
it's basically almost like free.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right, so they like that. That's part of the whole Dash treasury. They had applied for a proposal to be able to do that. So
Hmm.
some people were onboarding, but it was like walking around. I did see that there is a real need for something simpler than what is out there currently
Yeah.
in terms of a point of sale to just be able to quickly onboard a merchant. So Cointext, we're working on our merchant solution, and it's a really good one, and it doesn't require really any onboarding. It doesn't require downloading of an app, but it made me really think like there's a huge opportunity here. The other thing is that the mobile connections were spotty. So
Oh shit.
so some people they had great like mobile connection and it was perfect and those people could use Cointext. I had great mobile internet, but crap like phone and texting, which I've never had
Weird.
that happen before. Like my
Yeah.
mobile internet was coming in great. It was LTE, but my just regular cell service on Sprint was super spotty, which made like
Huh.
the user experience of Cointext really tough because it was like it was working fine on the Cointext side, but it was taking so long for my text to get back to me, and it was just like, is this working? Is it not working? Like, what's going on? But it ended up working okay, and I ended
Right.
up being able to use a wallet. But I think that it's going to become a really really good opportunity, and I hope that it becomes or I'm going to push. Let's say this: I'm going to push next year, and spend a lot more time in the months preceding
Hmm.
trying to get mobile app developers and some other individuals to come out and like it's a real trial by fire. Like come out, bring your gear, bring your point of sale systems, like see if you can get some of these merchants to integrate them like and how
Yeah.
difficult will it be, given these individual limitations. It's really like a chance to have almost like a hackathon, you know what I mean? Because you're out in the middle
That's
of
cool.
nowhere, the data's not perfect. It's like, okay, how is this going to work in like the worst imaginable real life scenario,
Hmm.
right? To where signal spotty, Wi-Fi was like forget about it,
It's like
and then these
it's like
merchants,
it's
some of
like
them
if
are
you're
kind of what's that?
it's like if you're a fitness person, you're going to like Tough Mudder to try everything
Right.
out and see how.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is like the tough mutter of crypto app development. No,
Nice.
I really, really do see it that way. And I think that what's going to happen, like what I saw different from this year or last year was so Rogers Campground it's a big place, and
Uh-huh.
before people had kind of nestled into the main little area, but now this year people were purposely like going off. So now there are these little camps that you got to walk a little distance to, and then it's like in each camp they'll have like somebody doing food, usually selling something
That's
like
cool.
soap or essential oils. We had like 3 or 4 people doing food in the little area that we were in. Um, there was plenty of alcohol around, plenty of that. But like breakfast, no problem. There were people who were doing a sit down brunch and a sit down dinner, like kind of high end. And I could totally see this as being a thing. They sold out. They sold out all their
Huh.
seats for lunch for brunch and dinner before the event even started.
Damn.
Yeah, so people were taking reservations for their food, and
That's
people were
cool.
making great stuff. Like all people who are either have restaurants or are opening
Hmm.
restaurants, people showing off. The people who make cider, who make mead. I didn't really catch too much moonshine or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, but for VIPs, there's an open bar, so it was super boozy. Tons of kids stuff as always. Tons of dogs around. It was fun. It
Sounds
was a
like a
great
lot of
time.
fun.
But there's a lot. I think that I was trying to sort of reconcile the idea of crypto is actually still. It's actually still. Although this is the community that's picked it up, man, it's in such a baby stage. I
Yeah, dude.
realize that. Like it's in such a baby stage, and the fact that when I looked at like the people who are sort of uh, known in the crypto space, Tone Vase was there,
Hmm.
totally trolling, like representing the BTC side. Like he did not break troll character, which I give him credit for. Like
Oh shit.
just just a real life troll. It was like wow. Dash had a whole bunch of people there.
Yeah, I
Um,
tried to catch some of the Dash Force News podcast thing that was going on.
they did quite a lot of
That
content actually out of there. So I was
yeah.
on like a little piece that they had. They had Tone Vase on one. Chris Pacia was there. He did a debate with Tone Vase, and then he was on his crypto panel with me as well from the lead developer from Open Bazaar. And so he was pretty much holding down the Bitcoin Cash side. Jeffrey Tucker was there. Again, I missed him talking. I didn't even get a chance to
Hmm.
see him because I was laid up on Saturday. But, Dash, they were out in full force. And I don't know about these people who just think things are just going to happen. These people who are like,
Hmm.
oh, it'll just, especially on the Bitcoin Cash side, it's like, oh, it's better. It's just better, so it's just going to happen. And it's like,
Hmm.
it doesn't actually work like
It
that.
takes a lot of
I didn't see anybody walking around trying to onboard merchants to BCH. I did a lot of onboarding to Cointext, and then people were using Cointext. The people who I knew who accepted it. Okay, no problem. But besides that, there wasn't anybody walking around onboarding people to Bitcoin Cash.
damn. Sounds like Dash is working hard.
Well, I think there's something to be said, and I've said this from the beginning, is that there's a real difference in how you behave when you're getting paid to do something.
Yeah.
Even if you're truly passionate about it, even if it's what you're
Hmm.
really truly into, professionals just behave in a different way. And I think there's also something to be said for the amount of what am I trying to say here? It's almost like the amount of confidence you have when walking into a situation to onboard a merchant. Like there's a very different scenario whereas like you're wearing a Dash shirt because like you work for Dash, like you pay
Hmm.
your rent with Dash. When you talk about economic incentives of like needing to see this thing move forward, when you take your
Hmm.
paycheck in that currency, it's like do you become a shill? Kind of, but like, isn't that the right kind of shill to be? Like, isn't that
Right.
exactly the scenario that it's supposed to be? That like you
Mhm.
really, really, truly have skin in the game, and that's why you're supporting this project. So that treasury, man, it's no joke. It's really no joke.
Hmm.
It's very, very
Well,
important.
I think the combined efforts of one having passion for it and two getting paid for it, because like if you look at, going to work every day, a lot of people don't have passion for that. So therefore the shill like mentality or whatever it may be would be uh the behavior would be that, like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people when I go to work, a lot of people are complaining they don't want to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and it just gives off a wrong, vibe. But then if you have somebody that's passionate and also getting paid for what they do, it's you know, it's great.
Well, that was something I saw from the Dash guys was
Hmm.
they are just like they're all about it. They just talk about it all the time. They
All the
love
time.
it. They live it, and they're also really nice guys. That's the other thing about it. Like, there's not a lot of real like trolling that comes from that side. And as we talked about last week, I mean, I've turned off a lot of the voices on the
Hmm.
BCH side, and it's mainly because it's like it's basically what I saw. Like I will go out there and it tells me that there's a lot of space within Bitcoin Cash, but it's gonna have like I hate to say like, oh well, we're just gonna do everything, you know,
Hmm.
like we as the team that's currently at Cointext, like we're just gonna do all this shit. Like we're gonna develop the point of sale. Like we're gonna get out there and onboard these merchants, and we're gonna do all this because I don't see who's doing it.
Hmm.
I don't see who's doing it because this was the place to be to do it. And I didn't see people there. Like I didn't see people wanting to do the work. It's not just going to happen. Like that's the big news flash. Is that if you want any of this stuff to happen, it's not just magically going to appear.
Yeah.
The free market does not mean like this is the misunderstanding people have is that it's like the free market does not just mean that you can just sit back and do nothing and that things will happen.
Hmm.
It's actually the
Hmm.
opposite. It's that the free market says, no, if you want to do this, no one can prevent you.
Hmm.
There's not going to be a lot of layers of friction and a lot of barriers, but you're going to still have to do it. If you have the idea, you're going to still have to fucking do it.
Hmm.
Nobody else is just going to come along and do it. And it's like it's so weird. Like I'll talk to people, especially like BTC people, and they'll say, "Oh, well, your service is kind of like reminiscent of like Cointext. It's kind of reminiscent of Coinapult, which was started by Eric Voorhees, right,
Uh-huh.
years ago." Which we mention in our white paper, like straight off. We're like, yeah, there are other things that are similar to this, whether it's on the crypto side or whether it's on the fiat side. Like M-Pesa is another thing that's similar. And I'm like, yeah, it is similar to that. Coinapult is no longer around though. And then it's like, but we are. We are.
Yeah.
Something goes away, and then it's like,
Hmm.
okay, everything you create doesn't have to be something new. It just has to be something useful. Like if
Hmm.
if if there's a demand for a burger joint on your street and you put a burger joint there, it's not like you're doing anything unique having a burger joint. It's just that hey, the location's good and like there's a line around the block because people want
Right.
burgers here. Like we don't need to. Maybe the real message is we've had all of these solutions and they were just ahead of their time, and maybe we need to go back and grab the solutions.
Yeah, time can be a huge factor in that as well.
Timing is
Mhm.
everything.
Timing, location.
Just because one thing didn't work in a particular location doesn't mean that it's not that it's or it did work doesn't mean it's going to work in every location, or that it didn't work doesn't mean that it won't work in another spot at another time with another group of people. But this for me was really eye opening because I had just gotten back from Hong Kong, this very slick conference, well put together, a lot of money spent, and everybody talking about merchant adoption, right? BCom, it was a
Hmm.
BCom conference. Everybody talking about merchant adoption. And then I go to a place where it's like, oh, here's all these merchants who are actually willing to do it. How do we this is a perfect proving ground. Like, how do we convince this old timer who doesn't know anything about this? How do you onboard him
Yeah.
quickly enough? You know?
And you have a group of people like the people that are in the meetup um, environment that are probably willing to go out there and do it if they had like some funding or if they had something to, some incentives. So there's people out there like on the Bitcoin Cash side, there's definitely people out there passionate enough to go out there and do something like that.
I just
You
think
know,
that
it
the tools are not easy enough and slick enough, right? I
Mhm.
almost feel like what's really going to push it over the top is a very cool or easy and cool user interface that people want to really show off. Like Cointext has been great, and we're doing more and evolving that user interface now.
Yeah.
And we're evolving, and we're going to do more on the merchant side with our merchant solution. But for me, it's like, how easy can we make this? How easy can we make this? And I
Yeah.
see Porkfest as being a prime opportunity. I mean, next year we're really gonna go hard at it to be like, okay, how can we onboard these people? And maybe we have a couple of different options to where it's like, okay, how about this? How about this? How about this? Because
Hmm.
it was a little rough. People trying to use their phones, like a lot of them were onboarded using their phones. I don't think that's necessarily the best thing. I don't know whether it's separate devices that are connected to the phone somehow. I don't know if it's, bring them around some little 7-inch tablets that are already pre-programmed, and then
Right.
somebody sort of sets it up for them and then takes them away at the end of the day. There was not. I know that the Bitcoin Cash guys had Bitcoin Cash. The Bitcoin Store guys, Bitcoin Shop, which is in Portsmouth, they had brought basically like most of their store there, and I know that
Hmm.
they were doing some exchanges. So they were buying back. I think they said that they would buy Bitcoin, BTC, and Dash back for cash. So that's handy, right? So a lot
Yep.
of these merchants, the thing was they just didn't want to sit with that crypto. There still isn't the critical mass, and that's a big
Hmm.
thing for merchants, is obviously getting to cash very quickly. But PorcFest, that's an easy thing to handle. Very, very. It's just like, oh, just walk up at the end of the day and we'll switch you out for cash.
Hmm.
So I think I may even do that next year, like set up a little exchange, because there's no state laws here, and so long as you do under $1,000 per person per day in exchange,
Ah,
you're with inside the federal limits. So yeah, I mean, God, dude, there's just a lot to be done. It's
yeah. Yep.
it's I think it's great, and it's humbling to get into that sort of situation, because you get online and you get on crypto Twitter, and people, or you look at like the Hong Kong conference and you get caught up in that and you think, "Oh, we're already there. We're already there. We've already won." And it's like, dude.
Well, I think too, a lot of the especially with development stuff like that, they're looking more for innovation than they are for like, I guess you would say, embodiment and usage. They're looking for creating the next app. They're looking for some kind of innovative way to do it. It's like, no, the innovative way is already there.
Mhm.
Just go back to the basics, get people, whether it be some kind of marketing that you do or some kind of like almost like a elevator pitch that you have
Mhm.
for a merchant or something to get them interested and actually using, you know.
Well, I'll tell you that dash back thing. I'm
That's
going to have
cool.
to get with them and find out, because I think what happened was, so if somebody accepted Dash, if I've got this right, using AnyPay, you accept Dash, I think both the merchant and the buyer get money. So it was like,
That's really cool.
yeah, people sold something for,
Hmm.
like, let's say you bought like a $10 meal, the merchant would get like $3 back, the person would get like $5 back out of it.
Hmm.
They're basically putting up this money up front. I mean, it's one of those things where you're going in and some people were walking out like, "Oh, I basically got that for free. Dash paid for that." Now, the question that you have to ask is that sustainable? Clearly that's not going to be sustainable,
Yeah.
right? You can't just live off free money. I mean, it's that adoption wears off very quickly, but there is. So Cointext, we just closed finally. Finally, it took a long time, but on
Hmm.
Friday, and maybe that's why I was cutting loose a little bit. We closed on this seed round of VC funding.
Nice.
So went through that whole process, the whole venture capital process. Managed to get it all done in the right way. We had some offers from some of the bigger players in the space. We kind of like deferred away from those just because we didn't want to take on certain people's enemies. We weren't really sure that we wanted to be beholden to certain personalities in the space. This group is kind of a little bit outside of the space, but still does some investment with blockchain companies and with crypto companies. There'll be a press release coming probably in the next 24 hours about this. But one of
Nice.
their prerequisites for the companies they're investing in is that it had to affect 1 billion people. It had to have the capability to affect 1 billion people. And so their look at it was, and I really like this, and it's one of the reasons why we felt comfortable moving ahead with these guys, was their whole thing was like, look, let's just figure out what the cost to onboard somebody is,
Hmm.
and then let's just throw money at it until we've got 3 billion people onboarded. Like figure out, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what is it to onboard somebody? Is it 50 cents? Okay. Then we just know, build it out to that point, and then we need, $1.5 billion to onboard 3 billion people.
Hmm.
And then we've got them onboarded. And what does that look like? So that's just something where you get it to a point where it's just a matter of throwing money at the problem, which is what you want.
Absolutely.
right? To be able to grow a business, you want to just be able to just say, okay, it's going to cost this much money to grow our business, this amount, no
Hmm.
mystery. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. I think that that's a very difficult thing for most companies right now to say, right? Like like a wallet, the average wallet creator, wallet app creator, you ask like, well, how are you making money? Like, how are you going to be sustainable at this? And
Hmm.
Dash is giving away free money. Okay, I don't think that's necessarily the sustainable way. You've got to find a way that somebody wants to buy a piece of your company legitimately to legitimately make money because they legitimately think that, this whole entire space is going to blow up. People just need to start building, man.
Hmm.
They just need to start building. And I mean, it does not necessarily have to be a technology company. It doesn't. I mean, honestly, a company that was just that their whole thing was like, we're just going to take the best technology available and we're going to go out and try to just onboard merchants. That's all we do. We onboard merchants. Even and if they figured out a way to take some percentage out of that or got with a point of sale manufacturer to figure
Hmm.
that out, like these are the next steps that we really need. So, I hope next year that there are more crypto companies there. I think it could be massive in that regard. And there's a lot of people who would, I mean, there will be investors who will go out there just to look and see what people are doing.
Oh, I'm sure. It sounds like to me like this is definitely the heart and soul of the true crypto movement, not the hodler crypto movement, but the true crypto movement. And with freedom forward thinking and stuff like that, this is definitely where you want to be, you know.
I mean, it's well in terms of the usage of it. As I said, Tone Vase was there, and he was doing his same typical like trader hodler thing,
Yeah.
and it was just not resonating. It was just not resonating with the crowd there. Like the crowd there was interested in usage. They were interested in actually like using this as a means to grow liberty around the world, but particularly here. That's what the crowd was wanting.
Hmm.
That's what that group was into. And I mean there was a lot of crypto. There was a lot of crypto moving. But what I'm seeing is that like it's Dash has been successful right now because they are plying people with free money, and that's effective in the moment. That's great. My worry is just like, if you stop with the free money, do you immediately lose all of the
Yeah,
usage?
it's a possibility for sure.
I mean, that's what you would expect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, to me, that seems what I know about how human beings behave. It's like, yeah, when all the free shit is gone, the people take off.
Hmm.
When you actually have to pay for it, and it's not like, I mean, Dash is not that expensive in terms of minor fees or anything like that, you know.
So what do you think I think that the true incentive for people to onboard like that would be freedom, but they have to understand it first. So they gotta kind of go through a little evolution phase of understanding why, like, why something like this would benefit them.
I,
And that takes teaching, basically.
I mean, I'm wrestling with that. I really am.
Hmm.
Like, I'm wrestling with it because there's two ways to approach it, right? You either approach it from the side of like, let's step completely outside of liberty, let's step outside of the ideology, and it's like the same reason that you would walk into to somewhere and be like, hey, do you take Visa? No, you don't take Visa. Well, you're really missing out on a lot of
Yeah,
opportunity here,
right.
right? So it's almost, I think that, the things that people do in terms of meetups, like going to restaurants and saying, hey, we want to have a meetup here, but, it's Bitcoin Cash. Will you accept Bitcoin Cash? And setting them up, same as we did with George at the distillery.
Hmm.
Like, this has been typical of people doing meetups. And I think there's a business opportunity there,
Absolutely.
right? For a company, whether it's in a particular city, whether it's almost touring might make sense, especially if somebody's on the East Coast, right? That it's like you do one in Boston, and if you're in like New England, you do one in Boston this week, and then the next week it's in Portsmouth, and the next week it's in Vermont somewhere, and the next week it's in Connecticut, and I don't know. I think there's a big opportunity there. It's maybe something for you and I to talk about like
Hmm.
I think that that's a great way to start onboarding merchants to this whole thing.
It could be built into, I was thinking about this a while ago. It could be built into some kind of marketing strategy too, like for the business. I think like maybe even using some of the things with technology, like in the social media space,
Hmm.
like bots, for example,
Hmm.
um, implementing some kind of like Facebook bot with the sign up package to where they can get some marketing out of it too, and they can get some automation out of it and start leveraging the technologies that
It's
are there,
interesting.
not just on the crypto side, but on the on the mainstream side too.
So so a marketing business would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We have this demographic,
Mm.
right? We've got this cryptocurrency demographic that
Hmm.
we have a grasp on, whether that's via social media or whatever. You as a business, come on board. We'll onboard you. We'll get you set up so that you can accept cryptocurrency. We'll get you trained up, whether that's like remote training or whether that somebody physically goes there. We'll have a call center to help you out in the case that you need that. And what you get as a result is we will market your business out, whether it's on some sort of a platform like I mean, you've got Liberty.menu, which is a platform, but I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know what the marketing would look like in this case. Maybe it's a mailing list that goes out to certain people. Maybe it's by region. Um, yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
there seems to be something there in that scenario. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting. It's I think it's something for us to talk about a little bit more because I think creating a scenario where people have that sort of incentive
Hmm.
is the key because it doesn't exist anywhere but Dash, and I worry right now that the way that they're doing it is unsustainable.
Ah, yeah.
It's free money.
Hmm.
It's free. You can't. Free money is not sustainable. The
No.
profit motive. The profit motive is imminently sustainable. That it's like, oh, here's a sustainable business, and how do we make it sustainable? Well, by onboarding these people, And even if
Hmm.
that's like on the back end, it's some like small percentage. You figure if a company was taking a small percentage of every transaction because they had signed this company up, right? Let's say it's even only a few cents of every transaction,
Hmm.
but that's over time. You sign up 1,000 businesses, and let's say only you get only one per day of a few cents. That still is some pretty
It's a
nice.
good amount. Yeah.
That's a nice residual income just coming into you. So I mean, there's something
Well,
to
what
be
I'm
said for that for sure.
What I'm thinking too is so we know that it's not sustainable to give out free money, but it is sustainable to give out and leverage technology that's already there,
Sure.
but or knowledge, you know what I mean? So like I think I don't know exactly, I have to explore it more, but I think building something where it implements some kind of really good marketing and leveraging the technology that's there with Facebook, Twitter,
Hmm.
YouTube, whatever it may be, and then combine because crypto really is the money of the internet,
It is.
so
Yep, for sure.
there's no reason why you can't be implementing some kind of marketing strategy with the internet and also some kind of um, profit maximizing with crypto with the internet as well. With local business I think it gets a little because a lot of their exchanges they're doing, it's brick and mortar, so people are going in
Hmm.
instead of buying online, but I think it still can be done somehow.
I mean, I think a lot of those companies too would prefer to be able to do easy crypto for cash exchanges. I
Hmm.
think that would be huge for those businesses, and it's like I could absolutely see there being a business for well, it would depend on the amount. If it was under $1,000 per person per day, which initially most businesses should probably be doing under $1,000 in
Oh,
crypto
I'm
per
sure.
day, right?
Yeah.
But just to have like an armed guard in a like armored truck who could come and do those exchanges at the business, sort of on demand,
Hmm.
at a little bit of a markup, let's say 2 to 3% of a markup, it would be significant. It really would in terms of
Hmm.
getting those people to be like, oh yeah, we'll do this. You mean we just call up or text and like this person's going to come and
Hmm.
exchange out the cash for us. Like, okay, that's so there's a business there.
Yeah.
There's a business there. I do think that those are always the questions. And those are some
Hmm.
of the things that I saw with the smaller vendors. For a lot of them, their concern was, how do I move this into fiat? Because it's not just setting them up, in that case, it's not just setting them up with a wallet. It's setting them up with, I mean, like I had to set George up and help him out with the
Hmm.
Coinbase account, right? And then explain to him and show him how, okay, yeah, it'll be like one day to go directly into your bank account. You can hit the button that makes it go directly into your bank account. It'll take like 24 hours for it to get there. But in that case, it still is like, okay, a merchant could do that and that's fine. But I do have a feeling that if they're doing crypto anyway, that to get paper fiat every day before their business closes in exchange, that's
Yeah,
significant.
that's great.
That's
Hmm.
that's really significant, um, and could be done with just a little bit, a tiny bit of capital,
Hmm.
And so I don't know. I think there's a lot of space. Liquidity is a huge issue, right? Getting these merchants to feel like, oh, I take crypto and I get cash, fiat cash in exchange. I think would make a huge, huge difference. It would have made a huge difference there at PorkFest, just by itself.
Right.
So, and that's for me. That's what I've always from the beginning, like from my first interactions with Bitcoin. That's what I always saw was that what I always imagined was that the greatest use for this is remittances or sending money across borders. And what
Yeah.
I always envisioned was like somebody basically like standing at an ATM or a money exchange, right? Exchanging their dollars, their fiat dollars, and having the person send to a specific QR code that was like a QR code of somebody off somewhere, right? Like their
Hmm.
friend who's in Philippines, and they're standing in front of an exchange, and boom, here it comes, and they send it to, and so it's like cash to cash in 10 seconds. That's always the vision that I've always had because I think that it's going to take that bridge. It's going to take that fiat bridge first, and it's not the bridge into a bank account. Because if you're, I mean, there were people
Hmm.
there. What's crazy is there were people there who were taking like Square and Venmo, but were not taking crypto.
Crazy.
But yet
And
were like total sort of hippie types,
yeah.
raging against the machine and whatnot. But they were taking Venmo.
And it's, well, I don't know about Venmo, but Square is it's pretty steep. It's pretty expensive. The fees are pretty
Oh, it's like
expensive.
3%, something like that. I think 3.75%, something like that.
Hmm.
But they're willing to do it. They're willing to take it.
Yeah.
If somebody would have been offering a crypto exchange there, I think I may do that next year. I think I may do that just because it's super easy to keep it regulated, of how much exchange you're doing between people per day. So yeah, man, yeah. But that was
Cool.
it. That was Pork Fest. It was pretty interesting. You got to get out here. Maybe Liberty
I
Forum,
know.
dude. Or Free Coast Fest. You're gonna have to get out here though. You're
I
gonna have
know.
to get out here.
I know once I go there, I'm gonna want to move. I already
Well,
know it.
yeah, I mean, that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me
Yeah.
for sure. What was cool is, and shout out to all the people who are viewers of the show who showed up. Some of whom it was their first Pork Fest, who showed up and hung out. There were a lot. There were a lot of people, a lot of viewers of the show.
Awesome.
People were asking about you. They're like, "Where's Christian? Where's Christian?" So no, I mean, that's what did it for me was going last year, seeing the people, also getting significantly trashed. I got messed up last year.
Oh
It's
shit.
you know what? You get around people and you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
and
Just
it's
have
just
fun.
like it's all good. It's all
Hmm.
good. So speaking of feeling comfortable around people, since now we've got a little bit of time, feeling comfortable, some comfortable shirts at Govern Yourself. Should have had these. Read 1984. Ethereum, Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and blockchain. You've got the wrong link up there. That's the self ownership link.
Oh,
We got Dash, No Hodl, got the individual shirt. These are at Govern Yourself, Make Bitcoin Cash Again, GVRNURSLF.com. We will definitely have a table of those next year. You can come back to us. I'm thinking actually that next year could be cool. You could take the govern yourself logo off there too. That won't go off by itself. You know what I was thinking, because people were pretty good actually about like the honor system. Like people left their booths and was like, "Oh, it's the honor system," you know, even with
Yeah.
expensive like $100 jewelry and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, just put it in the till." Crypto vending machine would have done very, very well.
Nice.
You
Yeah.
know, put up a vending machine. I'm thinking of like a vending machine. You know, you roll the shirts, have an old school. You know, that you open like this, open like
Mm.
this, open like this, or put them in a little container and it like I know they have that look like a soda can size almost, the container for shirts. I've seen
Yeah, they
these.
do. Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's not really good to wear them right after. You kind of have to throw them in a dryer or
Mm.
wash them or whatever. But you could do something like that and like shoot it out of the vending machine would be pretty cool. So crypto vending machine for shirts would definitely be useful. The book. I don't talk enough about self ownership. People asking questions about it while I was there. Selfownership.me. You could still go and get, of course, copies of the book only for cryptocurrency. If you've got crypto, you've got the book, the audio book, and the digital book. The audio book and digital book come together, or you could get all three, or you can just get a signed copy at selfownership.me. People were asking a lot about that. I gave a talk about the metaphysics of decentralization.
Oh, I love it, dude.
Something I've been talking. I don't know. I don't know if anybody recorded it or not. I'm not recording my talks anymore. I made that decision. So if you catch one, you catch one, and if it's recorded, then you know, great, fantastic, you've caught it. But it'll be on somebody else's page, somebody else's YouTube account. The book, Self Ownership, you can go and get that at selfownership.me. The question, what is ownership? There was a lot of course, great talk at PorkFest about property rights. But I also, and it's one thing to see the sort of like old school and new school. There's still a lot of resistance, dude. A lot of resistance.
Hmm.
That old school resistance to the state. There was still a lot of that there, and I'm just not there. It's so weird. I've been looking at you know, I'll every once in a while go to like the front page of Google News and like things about Trump and the police are
Yeah.
doing this, and I'm just like,
Racket. Fucking
I'm not, I have
racket.
no interest. Like I'm not
No.
resisting this because I'm already doing something completely different that just makes it irrelevant, right?
Hmm.
I look and it's like, man, pretty soon there is not gonna. It's gonna be so ridiculous because there's just not gonna be any money to pay these people's salaries. No, because that's what we have right now. The reason why this is a problem, like any problem that you see that is a problem with the state, it's because there's so much stolen money and they don't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
They don't know what to do with it except fight over it and cause problems. And that's what they're doing. Fighting with
Did you
each
see?
other for control of the stolen loot.
That's
That's it.
crazy, dude. It's crazy.
When there's no
That's,
stolen loot, when there's no stolen money, it's so peaceful.
hmm.
It's so damn peaceful. You know, but when there's this big pile of stolen money, it's just the worst people on earth are fighting over it. But it's,
Magnetized to it, just like, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. For me, I don't necessarily know if it's positive or negative that I've lost all sort of interest in politics as it stands. Maybe it's just because politics has gotten so absurd. Maybe there was a time when some of this was actually believable, but now it's at a level of absurdity where nobody really cares about
Hmm.
like the issue. They care about the people.
And they just want to be right about things, and
It's a
none of
very
it's right.
shallow. It's very,
Yeah.
very, very shallow, man. Very shallow. And you know, now they're propping kids up as like they're
Ah,
gonna fight
dude.
over that, but they're not really fighting over that.
Hmm.
They're not really fighting over kids being detained or separated from their parents. It's just like, no, it's just the latest. It's just the
Hmm.
latest attempt at a power grab. It's just the latest attempt to like throw somebody under the bus who's sitting in the chair that you want to be sitting in, who's spending the stolen money that you want to be spending in the way that you want to spend it, as opposed to being like, absolutely not. Let's just build and not
Hmm.
steal. and then the amount of prosperity that everybody has. Because that's another thing that's very interesting about PorkFest is that for a group of people who are supposed to be like very selfish and like property rights type of, there's just so much sharing. Everybody's sharing.
That's cool.
Everybody was sharing with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could ask somebody for anything and they would just share with you, and it's like, no, that's actually it. They just don't want to be stolen from. Like people are happy to be generous, but they don't want to be stolen
That's
from. Those are two different concepts.
mm-hmm.
And really you would think the people who actually are the most generous have the least interest in being stolen from. Because if you steal from somebody who's very, very selfish, you've only stolen from them. But if you steal from somebody
Right.
who's generous, you've stolen from the people that they would otherwise be sharing with as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, good point.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you steal from them, it's like, so you think you know better than this person does of how to spend this money. Now, ostensibly, they earned the money, right? Ostensibly, if it didn't come from theft itself, they earned it, which means they at least have some idea of what's valuable in the marketplace, which
Mm-hmm.
might indicate that they know how to spend money better than a thief knows how to spend money.
Right.
It might just indicate that they know how to spend money to build things as opposed to spending money to destroy things. That might be the person that you want deciding where their money is going to go to. Might be. Just saying. Just saying.
That's great.
It becomes very, very clear,
Mm-hmm.
very, very clear when you get around people who are interested in building and creating and to having the shackles taken off to be able to create. So like there were people making food there, not licensed. Not licensed. Making food for the people around them, their friends, people keeping other people fed, you know, getting money in cash, getting money in crypto. Nobody got sick. There were no problems. You know,
Exactly.
these were people cooking the food that they would have been cooking for themselves and their family, just cooking a little extra.
It would be interesting to do some kind of metrics behind that. Like if you had a group of people that did it with no regulations
Mm-hmm.
and just, off of keeping their name up
Mm-hmm.
and ethics and morality and stuff like that. And then you had a group of people that had regulations that are just trying to get away with shit and to see which one worked better.
I
You
mean,
know,
yeah,
it's very, it's
it would
clear.
be hard to have the control group, but I
Uh-huh.
certainly think that at PorkFest you could do something to that effect. What I saw people really taking care, you
Hmm.
know, because the thing was you were feeding people who you were going to see again, which is why I think community is super important. I think that we've got a chance
Yeah.
to go back to a time when it was more about community and that these sorts of intentional communities, I think New Hampshire is a great example, but it's not just to say that it can only happen in New Hampshire, but it's big here. When you have community, you naturally have an incentive to really give it your best because these are the people that you have to live with and deal with on a daily basis. It's just a totally different situation than most people are in. Like, I go to the store, I don't know who that person is. Even I go to my normal grocery store, like, maybe I see this person
Right.
regularly, but, you know, they're not specifically serving me per se. Whereas
Hmm.
in this case, it was like people specifically serving these particular individuals, having a conversation. It makes a huge difference, man. Huge difference in the way somebody behaves. Taking it into the real world, it's also like the trolling also stops. Unless you're somebody who's clearly well, I'm not gonna lay any slander on Tone Vase, but I will say the man has zero sense of humor and zero grasp of sarcasm or subtlety. So that tells me certain things about the types of disabilities that he may or may not have. And I'm not going to say he does or he doesn't. But what I will say is that his trolling did not stop. It did not
Damn.
stop. And it's like, then it's not fun or funny. Like, it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm a call Bitcoin Cash Bcash, and I'm a call it a scam online. But when I'm sitting next to somebody and having a debate or a private conversation with somebody, like that, I would use the term Bitcoin Cash as opposed
Hmm.
to Bcash, just to be like a human being in that scenario. Right? It's like, okay, I get on stage and I have a persona and I've got this role that I'm playing and I'm getting paid to do that. Okay, that's great. But break character for like 5 seconds. In private, let me know that you're a human being and not a robot. Let me know that you are
Yeah,
not so
seriously.
completely bought into this thing that that you're like, oh, here's this person standing in front of me, but I have no desire to even attempt to potentially have them think I'm anything other than an asshole. I'm going to troll them here in one on one, and it's like, not only that, that's pretty fucking ballsy. Like, because you're within arm's distance of somebody. You don't know that that person might just be having a bad day, and they just
Seriously.
decide, like,
Boom.
boom, quick shot to the jaw. Quick shot to the jaw.
Oh man.
So, but no, for the most part, the trolling goes away. People interacting. I had a lot of interactions with BTC maximalists. A lot of
Hmm.
that, and that's it. I think it's great. And we sit and we talk about, yeah, well, the fact is nobody here is really buying anything using Bitcoin. That's bad because they used to using
Uh-huh.
BTC. They used to at this very event, and now they don't. It's hard to argue with. It's hard to argue with like the reality of the situation.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting. I hope everybody goes. I'm gonna really, really next year figure out what the hell I'm gonna do in terms of what type of little business scenario. I might do a glamping thing actually. You know anything about this glamping?
No, what is it?
Like it's like glamour. It's like glamorous camping. They do
Oh
it. They do
shit.
it at Burning Man now. That it's like a 5-star resort
That's a
almost. Like,
cool concept, actually.
yeah, these like yurts. They have these very like cool yurts. They're like one bedroom with like a king size bed. Somebody, you can order room service. Somebody will come in and do. You could totally do this at PorkFest, right? And charge like a few grand for the week. Maybe it's just for the weekend. You do 3 meals. It's got a full like bathroom and shower set up. These super cool
That's cool.
yurts. I think you could sell quite a few of those. Quite a few. Because it had sewer, electric, and water hookups at every single one of these campsites.
Uh-huh.
So no, I think it would be awesome glamping. So maybe I'll do like a glamping setup. Why the hell not?
That's cool, dude.
Yeah, why not? Why not? That and an exchange. God, there's so many opportunities. There really are. And anybody who does food, oh, you need to get out there. The more food, the better. The more food, the better for sure.
Hmm.
What do we got in terms of time? 1:53. Okay, good. So the interview today is recorded. It's Curtis Stone. Um, I think it's a perfect example of somebody who's doing something small scale, but has really maximized this small scale. It's the type of thing that PorkFest is made for. Like we're in a decentralized world. We can do things small scale and still make a massive impact and be very, very comfortable. So let's
Hmm.
um, let's go off to break, and then we will come back with our guest Curtis Stone.
The spirit of art, the spirit of technology, the spirit of individuality. Baby Vodka. An ultra-premium spirit conceived by Vin Armani. Handcrafted and distilled in Las Vegas by master distiller George Rotz. Each bottle, a celebration of the individual, custom engraved and hand-signed by the creators. Each element blending in harmony to create a beautiful experience beyond imagination. Baby Vodka, the spirit of Vegas. Created by Vin Armani. Tailored by Christian Rays. Available for purchase exclusively with cryptocurrency at babyvodka.com.
Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope. At Vin Armani is my handle there. We are proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can check out all of our audio archives by going to activistpost.com. You can also check us out on terrestrial radio stations, dozens of them, and satellite, and also online on the internet, streaming at lrn.fm. That's the Liberty Radio Network. So big shouts out to those guys for including us in their fantastic content. Before we get to our guest, just going to give you a little bit about Countermarkets. Countermarkets.com, trends and strategies for maximum freedom. You can get your first issue for free at countermarkets.com. We are in June, but our July issue is coming soon. So this is actually, if you haven't received your first issue for free, now would be a good time to go and do it. I'm actually not even sure what I have coming up for my July article, but June finishes off a two-part saga, my story of my battle with the city of Las Vegas over my art gallery in Las Vegas. Some tips for agorists and just an all-around story that illustrates, man, the failures of local government and how one person with a bad attitude and a little bit of power can really do a lot to ruin the prosperity of a region and to take beauty out of the world. But luckily, there are so many things that we as individuals can do to add value and to add beauty, even to spaces that we may not have thought might be able to have them. And we're going to get into some of that discussion, a really very nice discussion that I had pre-recorded with a guest that it's his second time on the show. Very inspiring guy. Glad to have him back. My guest today is Curtis Stone. Curtis is a farmer, author, speaker, and consultant. His area of expertise is in quick-growing, high-value annual vegetables for direct consumer market streams. His book, The Urban Farmer, demonstrates organic, intensive techniques with a focus on business and systems to streamline labor and production. He offers a new way to think about farming, one where quality of life and profitability coexist. Curtis's farm, Green City Acres, is located in Kelowna, BC, Canada, and was established in 2010. In an 8-month growing season, the farm generates over $75,000 per year on only 1/3 of an acre. Curtis Stone, welcome back to the Vin Armani Show.
Thanks, Vince. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you back. It's been a while. Your story is one of the most inspiring of anybody out there. And our show, it's interesting. We always have had a very high libertarian bent. And we've talked about a lot of different technologies. And of course, high yield, small scale agriculture has been a huge it's a huge obsession of mine, although I have no green thumb. I've got like a black thumb. Anything, it dies. But I support local farmers, and I'm very, very interested in it in terms of growing the economy. The show's very much turned into kind of a cryptocurrency show, but as you know, I've moved to New Hampshire now, and I'm very active now within the Free State Project. And in addition to being pioneers of cryptocurrency, they're huge pioneers of small scale agriculture and selling it within the community. You're somebody who's really mastered this. I can't really think of anybody else out there who has been able to approach it in the way that you have and has been as successful as you have. So I'm glad to have you back on. For those people who don't know about Curtis Stone, who don't know about the urban farmer, you have one of the most interesting backstories. Would you mind, just for those people, again, since you haven't been on in a while, to tell us a little bit about how you became Curtis Stone, the urban farmer?
Yeah. So it all started around 2008 when I thought the shit was going to hit the fan. I thought that was going to be it. I was living in Montreal Canada, I was trying to be a professional musician. I'd spent, 10 years prior to that getting to that place. I was in a touring band, and I was writing film scores for small films, and I was trying to make a real go at being a professional full-time musician. But that had its challenges that I don't really need to get into. But when the economy started to taper back in 2008 and the recession started, I really thought this was going to be the sort of the big, the big thing that people were expecting for a long time. And I was just worried about how I was going to survive in and thrive in that kind of setting, because I didn't have any skills that I thought were that valuable to people. I had always been kind of interested in sustainability and organic farming and living off the land, and I felt like at that time that was a good moment to change my life, because it was no longer I didn't enjoy it as much as I did, and I kind of got sick of the party, and I got sick of the late nights, and I got sick of living in a big city that in tough times, Montreal would probably be the worst city to live in, because it gets freezing rainstorms in the winter, which gridlocks all of the infrastructure. Telephone cables break, power cables break, roads are undrivable. You can't even get out of your house sometimes. So there's no food. There could be no food there. So I was paranoid about that. Went on a sort of a journey of self-discovery. I rode a bike from British Columbia, from Kelowna, British Columbia, which is like 100 miles north of the U.S. border, all the way down to Tijuana, and I just visited organic farms and homesteads and eco villages and off-gridders and all this kinds of stuff, and just got inspired. And when I came back, I wanted to farm. I still didn't have money to buy land, and that's often the biggest barrier to entry for many growers. And so I just started farming in people's backyards and making a go out of it. And then I found that I was actually quite profitable. Like, even in my bio, when you mentioned how much money our farm makes, our farm now makes 100,000 on a quarter acre.
Oh,
So
wow.
we actually make more on less land now. And there's a bunch of reasons why we've done that. Really, it's just been about focusing on the products that sell, and just kind of parking the ideology on what we want people to eat, and just kind of selling what people want, what works. And yeah, that's kind of like, more or less where I'm at. A really, really short version of it. I mean, there's been so many different stages to get to where I am. I wanted to be a back to lander, like to go rural and live like in a community type thing, just because I hated society so much. I don't feel that, I don't have those discontent feelings anymore. I'm very optimistic about the things that are happening in the world, and really optimistic about how I've been able to how people can change it. And I really think that a lot of people don't give themselves credit in understanding their true power in their ability to change things. And I've just discovered that through my own journey. And they're like, holy shit, like I can't believe how many thousands of people I've inspired to do this similar thing, and how much I've changed. So it's been a pretty awesome journey. I mean, and then I wrote a book two or 3 years ago. That's done really well, and that's kind of led me to all kinds of other opportunities. I teach around the world now. I'm often on a plane at least once or twice a month in different countries, mostly in the US, and just teaching people how to do this. Like, I'm not trying. My farm my farm runs. It still does the same thing, but I don't run it day to day. I have a guy named Mark who pretty much runs it. I'm mostly focused on education and outreach now. That's been a lot of fun for me, and it's great to inspire people and see them mobilize. And tying the theme of farming into your show and your audience, I think there's a huge case to be made that local economics, starting at the food production as the center of that hub, to anarchists and libertarians alike who want to decentralize and take control of their lives. I think more people should be getting involved in food production. It's not about getting rich. It's not about creating the next Whole Foods. It's about providing a service that's needed in a community that has intrinsic value, no matter where the economy is and where the political state is. People need to eat. And I find food production is a great way to unite people and connect people regardless of their political interests or their cultural background or even the language they speak. Food is a sort of a universal way to connect with people. And I've found that everywhere I go, it's the same thing. And it's cool. It's inspiring. And there's a lot of people doing this. I'd like to see more people in the sort of the anarchist scene get into this stuff. Like I saw your talk down at Anarcho Poco, and I'm surprised that at that conference there isn't a track about farming, because I think it's so integral. Everybody's obsessed with cryptocurrency, but it's just like, dude, who's growing the food? Like,
Right.
if we want to decentralize and we want to, take control of our lives, like we need food production as the founding thing. And then like agriculture is the backbone of civilization, and without it, you can't have any measure of specialization. And so I think people in the liberty movement need to get into farming. And I'm not telling everybody they need to be a farmer, but they need to think about how it could fit into their lives and their situation more.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just share with you, when I moved here, and within a week, I was at a local Liberty market, which they have here with the Free Staters, and it's like in somebody's backyard on private property. It's basically a farmer's market. They don't charge for stalls or anything. Sometimes the person who's hosting it that month or that week will do the concessions or whatever, but it's within the community. Everybody's there using cryptocurrency, but what I was spending my money on was like, there was the community supported agriculture, so there were these local farms there. There were guys selling like not seedlings, but almost like ready to pot sort of plants to go in, almost that so that
Yeah.
because we have a short growing season. I found something very interesting that you said there. As I say, I do not have a green thumb at all, but I am a software developer, and I do see the parallels, with your story and with the story of so many people that I know. My own story in business with software is that those seem to be these two things that particularly now are tightly correlated, especially when you add in cryptocurrency buying the goods, that it's like you don't have to leverage a lot of capital. It's not capital intensive, but it's
Yeah.
incredibly skill intensive. It requires you to be
Yeah.
constantly learning, constantly sharing, constantly teaching. But what I found most interesting about what you said, and it's true, it was true for me as well as I really became a very competent developer, was my pessimism about what the future of the world was going to be started to diminish as I gained more skills and I realized that sort of, who will build the roads? Oh, I can build the roads.
Exactly.
I want to dig
Exactly.
into that a little bit more for you. At what point do you recall, like, at what point was it that sort of flip happened inside of you? At what level of competence were you like, oh, it's going to be okay now?
Wow. I mean, you know what? I mean, that's a big thing. I remember the first time I've been doing this almost 10 years. And so the first year I grew my own food and I ate my own, it was like salad in May that I was harvesting
Hmm.
from my farm. Just how empowered I felt in that there's just so much BS out there that wants to diminish our ability and our importance in the world. And when you start getting some skin in the game, like you start growing your own food, you start learning some skills that you can actually use in your day-to-day life that can better your situation with your family or whatever, or things that you can trade, skills that have intrinsic value to others. You all of a sudden see the world differently. Like I probably, like you and many of your listeners, used to be super pessimistic on the way the world was going, thinking that, we're all fucked and it's all gonna just go to hell and everything's out of our control. But then when I started taking control of my life, and first kind of like from this pivot center, starting with like, okay, what can I change in my life to take control of what I put in my body, and then maybe take control of how I make money and how I provide value to the community. Those things started to like improve, and those systems became better and more efficient, and I felt more and more empowered on what I could do. and I felt like more of a player in the actual game. And I think that was a big part of it because, like if people are just working 9 to 5 jobs, and I'll speak from my own perspective here because I'd gone through this. You're working a 9 to 5 job and you have opinions and perspectives on how the world is or ought to be, and you might have a negative perspective on it. If you're just going to your day-to-day job, it's tough. It's tough to live that way because you don't have any skin in the game in changing how it is. And I think that's a really tough way to live. And that's why I think the farming piece is pretty accessible to many people, because what I do is, like you said, it's very capital unintensive, in that I started my farm on $7,000, and now, I mean, I've got probably over $100,000 of assets on my farm. It's a lot different than what it was when it started. I live in a solar powered home. I've spent money on this operation as it's grown, but I incrementally took steps to get here. And the main takeaway I want to leave with people is, like, you just got to get started. You just got to do something. And I'm not trying to mobilize a revolution here. I'm just saying, like, take control of your life. If you're living your life and you're not living your values, like if you're checking out, if you're a libertarian weekend warrior, but then you go to the corporate job that you hate every Monday and you have to check your values at the door as soon as you walk into the office, that's a tough way to live. And I got to a point in my life. I have a young daughter now, like you, and I got to a point where it was absolutely dreadful to me to think about being in, like, maybe my golden years, looking back on my life and going, I wish I would have, like, done something when I saw the opportunity. And so the cool thing about where I've gone with all this is just, like, I've learned to see opportunities, and that has a lot to do with shifting my mindset from one that is scarcity and fear to one that is love and abundance. And then everything around in my world has changed. And where I always saw failures and bad things, now all I see is opportunities and good things and good people. And it's like you said too, and we were talking about you moving to New Hampshire a bit before we started, and it's a similar thing. You get into a community and all of a sudden your world looks so different. If you're just watching CNN and MSNBC all the time, you think the world is screwed. But when you get some skin in the game and start to associate yourself with some of the good actors in a community or a place, then all of a sudden the world looks very different.
I want to talk with you a little bit about this abundance mentality, but specifically when it comes to you getting into a place of selling your products. Because so often when I talk to people who, especially a lot of people who are actually very, very good at growing food, and that they have enough, certainly vegetables, that they supply all of their own vegetables, and then they talk to me about, canning. Oh, I'm canning at this time. I'm doing preserves, and I'm like, what about taking your stuff and selling it? You ever thought about selling it? Oh, I mean, sometimes I'll barter it or something, but, like, oh, there's nowhere to sell it. There's nothing. And I'm like, I'm ready. What are you talking about? Like, I'm ready to buy it. This to me seems like, wait, no, this is what people are paying a premium for. This is what people are going to Whole Foods for. Like, obviously there's people who want to buy it. I want to talk a little bit about you stepping into a place where, because I don't know, and you can expand on this. Did you step into it saying, I'm going to just be doing this for my own food, or did you step into it saying, I'm going to be doing this and I'm going to sell what I have? How did you overcome, because I know that there must have been that same feeling inside of you, at least initially, like, I don't know if I could even sell this. How did you overcome it? What were you talk about taking first steps? What were those first steps that you took that maybe some people could think to take?
So there's a lot there. You ask good questions, dude. So before I got into farming, that's all I wanted to do was do homesteading, like what you're talking about. But then after I did my bike tour down the West Coast, I felt super empowered. Like, I rode my bike 3,000 miles south. maybe I could go 60 miles in a day pedaling. And I met tons of people and just felt like fucking charged. Like, just like I could do anything because I was like traveling through the US by myself with a bike and a couple saddlebags and not much else except my own wit that that took me through there. And so I just felt like really, really empowered. And I knew that, like, okay, the homesteading is one thing, but you still got to pay bills, unfortunately, right? That's just the world we live in. That's the reality of it. That's the natural world too. Like, there's a cost to live no matter what you're doing. And so when I rationalized that, to me it was like, why would I not sell this stuff? Because do I want to just go and do some lame job and then do this on the side? It's just like, well, if I really want to live by my values, why don't I make a living at that? And that's one thing, and I find so many people have a tough time with that. Like, maybe not so much in the libertarian space, but in the sort of the green sustainability movement, which is very socialist.
Right.
They all hate capitalism, and they all think that if you make money from something, that taints it in some way, and it demoralizes it in some way. But the opposite is actually true. It's which is like everything in socialism, right? It's just like full of doublespeak and oxymorons. But the opposite is true, because if you don't make a living at this, then you're undervaluing it, and they're also giving that message to people, like, you shouldn't value this. It's like, well, you want to buy good food, you want to support things that follow your values, so why would you not be an actor in that space than just simply passing it off somewhere else? Like, why would you want to do this on the weekend and then go to a job you hate? Why wouldn't you want to support somebody who makes a living at this and is dedicated to it? It's like I get this sometimes with my workshops, because I'm at a place now where I teach only certain types of workshops, and mostly I'm interested in teaching higher value content. Like, my workshops are a lot more expensive because I'm really only interested in teaching people, like, my YouTube stuff. That stuff's free. I have tons of free and cheap content for people. But when it comes to things that I do one-on-one or with small groups of people, I raise the barrier to entry fairly high, because I want people who are, like, serious. Right. Like, because it's like, some of my workshops cost $2,000 to come for 5 days on a farm. And it's just like, if you're not prepared to spend $2,000 to save yourself 5 years of trial and error, then don't even waste my time, because that's just, I want to focus on people who are going to be successful, people who are already in that mindset, who understand that if they're going to start a business, they're going to have to spend money anyways. And so it's like, I'm kind of done with trying to just, like, convince everybody that they should do this. I'd rather just focus on people who are already kind of switched on to it. And then, like, it's like instead of preaching to the converted, I'm trying to mobilize the converted. And I'm not interested in preaching to people who don't care. It's just, I find in my life, you might find this too, the older we get, you realize, like, why am I wasting time with people who don't get it? Why am I trying to convince people who don't want to be convinced? Who cares? Just focus on your crew, focus on your space, and, like, the people that are moving forward with you, and then create like a scene, like something that's really strong. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because that's actually sort of been the theme in my life of this week. Was me. I actually was just saying yesterday, was just in a conversation where I was like, I am giving the wrong people way too much of my valuable time. Like, they really don't deserve it. They don't deserve even a second of my time. I've got so much to build.
It's like Facebook or something, right?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I call Facebook hate book.
Right.
And I stopped engaging Facebook. Unfortunately, I use it because when I do courses with people, I create little groups to help them communicate. But outside of that, I don't engage it at all. I don't look at it. I don't post. I don't like anything. I only engage in my groups. And I had this realization, like, I don't know, I put a video about it a month ago. It went, I wouldn't say viral, but it was one of my more viewed videos in the last couple months, and just going on about it. And it's just like exactly what you said. why am I giving anybody who is not worth my time? Why am I spending time with them? Why do I care what some dipshit on Facebook is saying about Karl Marx,
Right.
or some idiot is slamming a guy like Ron Paul or something? Like I was always on there like defending sort of libertarian ideas and stuff like that, and Jordan Peterson, wearing a Jordan Peterson shirt.
Yep.
And it's just like, who cares? Who cares? Because if you look at the really successful people, it's one of the things that they always do is they hunker down on their crew and they only move with their crew. Everybody else is irrelevant. Like even look at Jordan Peterson, man. Like, I mean, this guy is doing rock star stadium type events and talking about heavy intellectual philosophical ideas. Like, I don't think this has ever happened in history where that kind of thing has become so mainstream, but he's an example of somebody who's just like hunkered down on the people that are moving forward with them and then offered value to them. And it's obviously been a massive recipe for success. And so that's what I've done. It's just like YouTube is sort of, for me, the wide net capture to get people interested. And then there's other ways that they can engage me along the way. And if they want my personal time, there's sort of a barrier to entry to that. And there's a reason for that, is because it's partly a mindset thing that I'm not really interested in spending personal time with people who need convincing. It's like, we're past that, dude. Like, we're moving on to step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're done with the introductions.
Yeah, this is actually very, very useful for me. I don't know if you know, but I just recently started doing coding classes, teaching people who are straight newbies, and then by the end it only takes about 3 weeks, because I'm a self-taught programmer, and so it was like going back and putting together the sickest curriculum, and they're competent coders by the end of this 3-week process. You know what I mean?
Nice.
But I'm struggling because I also am a professional developer, and I've got a business, and I have a lot of hours to put forward on that. You've obviously been able to find a balance, and I mean, you put up an interesting video recently. I want to get into that, but I sort of am interested to get your opinion on, and this is purely selfish just for me, how do you find the balance? Because at this point you're a brand. And while you have your Green City Acres is also a brand, but it is an income generating enterprise. But you're also teaching, you're writing, you're interacting, and that's a revenue stream as well.
Oh, yeah.
I know that those two must be oftentimes competing for your time. You travel, I do the same. I speak at conferences and whatnot. What has been your formula for successfully navigating, either through delegation, through organizing your time, to be able to expand your brand in these other places while still growing the thing that is really the core and foundation that's putting food on the table? How have you been able to handle that?
Well, it's gone through many different, it's morphed a lot over the years, and especially after having a kid, it's really changed, because I'm more or less a stay-at-home dad. Like, I moved my office downstairs recently, which has been really good, because we used to have it upstairs, and that was challenging. I had my kid running around and stuff, and then me getting distracted, and my wife is a stay-at-home mom too. But I work, beyond full time, because I'm an entrepreneur. And like you said, like, I do many different enterprises. I think I have 9 different income streams from all of this. And I don't even take a salary from my farm anymore. All the money from my farm goes to pay my primary guy. And then if there's anything left over, it's used to reinvest back into the farm. I make like 100% of my living now from my intellectual content, my public speaking, my consulting, all the other stuff. Finding the balance has been challenging. The cool thing about the farm is that it's really where my heart is. And there's times when I'm traveling so much that I really miss farming, and I just kind of want to be back. And so the nice thing is it's always a place for me to create YouTube content, and I'm still engaged in the farm. Like, I step in and solve problems. I don't do any of the day-to-day stuff, though, like the harvesting and bagging of product and delivering. I don't do any of that anymore. I will if I need to, like if my main guy Mark needs a break, or if he's sick or something, or I just need to help him crank through something to get it done, I'll step in. But yeah, it's everything I do is off farm now for the most part. And as far as like organizing those things is lists. I am so anal retentive about lists. I use a program called Wunderlist. There's another one called Things, and you can use Evernote for this thing. But I basically like constantly have lists, and I have different categories of lists. Like, you know, today I've got like 10 different things that I've got to get done on my list. And you know, the one challenge too is like, if you want to be a regular content creator, and you want to stick to a schedule, that becomes really challenging when you want to travel and do things. So for example, I've got quite a bit of traveling this summer. I usually do most of my traveling and speaking in the winter, but I'm going to Quebec for 10 days on Friday. I'm going to be in Montreal, and then I'm teaching a workshop Monday through Friday at a farm called Les Farms des Quatre Temps, which is the new farm of Jean-Martin Fortier, who's an author and a friend of mine. And then I'm going to Sweden for 2 weeks after that. So it's like, how do I continue to have content posted regularly when I'm in airports and traveling around? And basically what it does, what it comes down to is I have to just grind. Like this week I'm grinding. Like I'm working 12-hour days, with breaks here and there for my family and stuff. But I'm basically just, I do a content calendar. So it's like I'm doing I have a mailing list. I do like a weekly mail out. I write a weekly blog on Medium. I do 3 videos a week on YouTube. I do regular things with my online courses. Like I have 2 online courses. I'm going to have a 3rd one this summer. And so basically what I have to do is like look at this calendar as like, these are all the things that have to get done. I need a video Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I have my email and my Medium blog that gets published on Friday. That's every week. So those are like, that's the foundation. And so I know what needs to be done there. It's just like I put that into my list program. And like this week, for example, I'm basically doing all this stuff before I leave so that I'll have things scheduled. So like my 2 blogs on Medium will be written for the next 2 weeks before I leave. I'll have at least 5 videos pre-recorded and scheduled to post in YouTube before I go, because once I get on that plane, I'm not going to be doing anything for my day-to-day stuff. It's already pre-done.
Right.
And so that's been super important, and really sticking to that schedule. But I find like if you're really clear with your lists, it's better when the stuff happens that is the sort of the when things go sideways and unexpected. You got to have a list, because it's so easy to get derailed by certain things. Like I'll get an email from somebody that's I got to fix a problem right now. Okay, so that derailed me for 5 minutes. I got to have the list because that's my center. Like that's where I go back to center. It's like when you're playing squash and you need to stay in the center of the court, you always go back to the center after every shot. It's the same thing with my lists. They're so important to me because like I need to stay on task, and always making decisions of what's really important and what's not so important. Like I get a ridiculous amount of emails and I can't even look at them all. Like sometimes I get 50 emails a day.
Oh boy.
And you know, I have a period of time. I really only answer emails once a week. Like, but important emails, like I see an email from you, okay, I respond to that. I see an important email that's sort of that, you know, I'm valuing everything on win-win. So, okay, what's in it for me? What's in it for them? And win-win things I usually sort out right away. Like I'll look at my email for like 5-10 minutes in the morning and only answer important emails, and then the rest gets backed up, and then one hour at the end of each week, I go through and answer the ones that are worth my time, and then the other ones I just can't look at. You know, a lot of people just email me asking questions. It's like, dude, you can Google that. You can watch that. You can search that on my YouTube channel. I don't answer any questions or spend any time on things that are out there. And that's partly why I like to put out tons of free content, because I want to help people, but I just don't have enough time in the day to help everybody. It's just not practical, especially when you have a family. So my time is more valuable to me than ever now, because I have a child and a wife. And so, you know, I need to have a life too, right? So the lists have been so crucial for me, and just consistent scheduling and sticking to that.
I like it. I like it. I think that brings me to this. Last month you put up a YouTube video, and you're clearly very very busy. But the topic of the video was that you had been looking to potentially expand beyond this very very productive and very very profitable quarter acre that is currently Green City Acres. You were looking around to purchase some farmland and to expand out, which clearly would have been a significant amount of additional time.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting as you sort of in this video walked through this decision-making process that I think every successful entrepreneur has gone through at least once, if not multiple times in their life, of saying, okay, my business is at a place where it's sustaining itself, it's generating income, my family is fed, we're comfortable, I have an opportunity to expand. Do I expand? Could you just walk us through sort of what you were thinking as you went to potentially explore this expansion, and then how you came upon your final decision of what you were going to do in that regard? I just found it fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. So, the idea there was I've done really well in the last few years. Like my book has done really well. It's made me a good amount of money. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm pretty sure I'll be close to that in a couple years. We also live very, like my wife and I are very modest. Like we live really simple lives, and so I had some money, and I was like, I don't want to put it in the stock market. Like I'd rather buy. I still my core principles of like I want things that have intrinsic value, and so I got really interested in buying land again. Now I've owned my home for a while, mortgaged it. We're almost debt free now, but I was just going like, well, I should just buy a big farm because it's something that I know I can do. It's something that I could scale, and it's something that I could also dump a lot of cash into, and it would be an asset that has intrinsic value, unlike other things, you know. I'm a metals guy too. Like I've been into gold and silver and stuff like that for a long time. But I still, at the end of the day, you can't eat gold. And so for me, like farming is like the most valuable thing. And when I even listen to big investors like Jim Rogers and James Rickards and stuff, these guys all say the same thing. And I'm a farmer, so I get it more than probably most people. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's scale it. I'll 10x Green City Acres. And I've got really good rapport with our customers. Like our primary market streams for the farm now are like chain grocery stores, believe it or not, like Whole Foods. And it's funny, like the people at like the head office of these places know who I am. They like my stuff. They like my YouTube channel. And so my off-farm personality, my brand, has actually given me the opportunity to scale my farm like hugely if I wanted to. And so that's kind of where the idea was. And I thought, well, you know what? I could buy a big piece of land, do a really big farm, big in market gardening senses. Like the total production was going to be 6 acres, which would have been about $1.5 million in revenue a year, gross revenue. But you know, there's a lot of risk there. So anyways, I thought I would do that because, hey, I could teach workshops there. It could be more of a hub. Like I wanted to host conferences and events and things like that. Really ambitious. But then, I don't know, I kind of had these moments with my wife, you know, like we lay in bed in the morning with our daughter and talk and you know, just like kind of have gratitude and think about things in our life. And it just kind of came up through conversations like, why would we want to change what we have right now? Like we have such a comfortable, I want to say easy life. Everybody has challenges, but we've got a great thing going on. Why would I want to start a farm and go through the grinding that it's going to take to do it? Not only like the farm was going to cost like around $2 million. The land itself was going to be about $1.5 million with houses on it. There's a lot there, but Kelowna's real estate market is incredibly overvalued right now. Like it's insane. And so that was part of me wanting to pull out. But, yeah, I thought we'd do this whole thing, and then I just started to put my life in perspective, and I was just like, do I really want to do that right now? Like, I've got a good thing going on. Like, Green City Acres is chugging along. It's steady. It's consistent. It doesn't take me much time. And because I have the freedom to like switch things up and travel, why not really enjoy that for our daughter's, first formative few years, because it's easy on us and it's easy on her. Whereas if I was bootstrapping this farm, I would be grinding every day because I'd be delegating to people and all this. And I know what's involved in a farm. I've consulted on hundreds of farms across the world, and I've helped start many operations. And so I know what's involved even on the large scale. And so I just kind of was like, I don't really want to do this. It was funny though too, because I had the deal accepted. I had all the financing in place. I had everything good to go. It was basically just removing conditions from the offer. And I pulled out at the last minute. I was just like, drop it, forget it. My wife and I talked about it through a lot, and we really felt comfortable in our decision. And I have no regrets at all. I mean, in fact, I'm glad I didn't do it, because I know what I would be doing right now. I probably wouldn't have time to do this podcast with you or have time to do anything else. And so I'm glad I didn't do it. And I think the real estate market in Canada is at its peak, and I think we're going to see some economic changes coming up. So that was part of it too. But it's just like, why keep chasing that? The one thing with farming is it's hard to scale. And the damn government has so many regulations that when you get up, like, you can have small scale, and there's a pretty, I would say, a relatively free market in terms of growing vegetables. If you're doing dairy or eggs, it's something else, but pretty free market when you're small. When you want to get into the medium scale, you've got just like all the same regulations that are at the huge scale. So it's like, my farm would have been the medium scale in terms of what agriculture is considered and how scalable it is. And so it's like, it was just risky, and I didn't want to have to deal with all the bureaucracy, because I really can't stand. I consider myself an agorist like you, and I just can't stand dealing with government. And so there's something really cool and liberating about running a really small farm, because you can operate without all that nonsense.
I love it. And I mean, small farm as in somebody doing something in their backyard. I mean, I think that this is a really, it's an underappreciated activity that people, particularly libertarians, can be taking to really, really make a difference and really, really change things, because it really is a way to engage people and bring them into this whole experience. Speaking of engaging people, bringing them into the experience, you mentioned that you're doing a lot of traveling lately. I know that you're someone who's constantly evolving in terms of your beliefs about what you should be doing in your own business, what people should be doing in general. As you're traveling around lately, is there anything that sticks out to you that you would say you're passionate about communicating and engaging with people on a subject that is something that has been emergent, that is something that maybe was not necessarily there a year ago or 2 years ago, but that you're like, you know what, this is a realization that I've had recently, that if I'm going to be here, I'm going to travel, this is very important for me to communicate to you. Is there something recently that stuck out like that?
Yeah. I mean, as far as what I communicate when I'm a public speaker somewhere and speaking on specific issues, yes, like there's two things here. And the first one's probably more important. I'll say that there's two. One is mindset, for sure, and I'll kind of go on that a little bit, and I have already, but I'll say a couple things more about it. And then the other is that the political space has changed. Not just the political space, but I think there's a cultural zeitgeist happening right now, and I think it's pretty exciting. So, I mean, first thing is, like, I really want to convey to people, look, you have no idea how powerful you are. Don't listen to what anybody says, that you're just a drop in a bucket. You can absolutely crush it. You just have to have an arrogant belief that you can do it and not let people phase you from your passion or your dream. I always try to convey that in my content, because I find that the details are some details they're just going to have to figure out for themselves anyways. They're going to have to struggle through those. And I share all those details in an open source way. But the mindset thing is hard for people to understand because everything in our society tells us the opposite. Like everything in our society, especially for those of us who went through the public school system, have been more or less indoctrinated with an idea that we're just cattle. In a figurative sense, we're just cattle in the system, and the state will herd us into whatever like little paddock that we want to go into. And I'm sort of metaphorically explaining this, but that's how I see things. Is that, and then people have a hard time picking themselves out of the herd because they think they're just herd animals and that they're being farmed, and they don't think about it that way literally, obviously, but I find it's really important to understand. It's like no. Look, you don't really understand how powerful you are. And I wouldn't say I'm not religious, but I do think that we are like children of the stars. Like we are like the anointed ones, and it isn't just people in power that are those ones actually know this, and they know this to be true, and that's partly why they can, in my opinion, why they can be where they are, and the rest of us don't believe it, and then that's why we're not there, we're down here. And so it's a mindset thing, but also I just find there's like this massive cultural zeitgeist happening right now, and I think like the mainstream media has officially been called out. Agreed. And they're losing their grip of controlling people's thoughts and minds and hearts. And I think more people are figuring that out. I don't, what happened in the U.S. with Trump is interesting, and I'm not like a Trump supporter, and I don't want to pretend that I fully understand what's going on within the U.S. and the government and the sort of the global hegemony, but it looks to me like there's that the cage is being rattled. And there's things changing, and I see a lot of opportunities in that. And I think mostly it stems from that the mainstream media is losing its control. And so these are things like that I have personal conversations with people. I'm not out to talk to people about politics as far as my content goes. When I'm a public speaker somewhere, I don't engage people on that because I find it just divides people, and it's like not everybody's at the same place in their life, like I would have, 10 years ago, I would have been a guy who wanted to vote Bernie Sanders. Like I had those, I've changed politically, and I find that's what's happening right now is that we're shifting into a time where it's becoming clear that there is abundance. And I find the old mindset, and it's somewhat political too, and this is just my view on it, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me like the socialist idea that the state should control everything is actually rooted in a scarcity mindset.
For sure.
Because it means that the problems are out of your control and that somebody else is going to change them. Whereas the libertarian idea is actually rooted more, potentially, I know some libertarians are very scarcity minded, but it could be rooted more in the idea of abundance, because it's like, hey, you don't like something? Change it. Yeah. Do something. Get off your ass, get your hands dirty, and make shit happen. And I just find that is a lot more of an empowering outlook in life anyways, because it only requires you to take responsibility for your life. And so I see that, with guys like Jordan Peterson who are selling out massive shows, and they're conveying a similar message. He's not talking politics at all, but he is speaking to that cultural zeitgeist that there is a mindset shift happening, and people need to take responsibility for their own lives and change things.
I love it. I think that's a very good place for us to sort of end this off. Great message. I agree 100%. I do think that the change is happening, and we're a part of it. And I'm glad to see you out there doing what you're doing. And it's great. Every time I check in and see what you're up to, it's like just so inspiring. Can you tell people if they want to check in themselves, where's the best place to reach you, see your content, get your book, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So they can find most of what I do at theurbanfarmer.co. They can also find me on Twitter. I have 2 Twitters now. I'm starting to use my personal one, which is Farmer C Stone. I think that's my new Twitter handle. I just kind of created it a little while ago, but I'm going to be doing more stuff on that, and I'm writing on Medium once a week. And if they just search, I think it's Urban Farmer. If you just search Urban Farmer Curtis Stone on Medium, you'll find me. I'm writing once a week. I'm just trying to do more writing, and I'm still going to be doing videos, but I really enjoy writing, and I'm going to be writing on Medium once a week for the next little while, and I'll probably be refining a lot of this content down into a new book. But if they go to the urbanfarmer.co, they'll find me, and if they go on YouTube and search Urban Farmer Curtis Stone, they'll find me there too.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. All right, let's see if I can get myself back there. There we go. So thank you very much for being on, Curtis Stone. I thoroughly enjoyed this. This is an incredibly inspiring interview, and we will see you. So, Christian, we are back. Did you lose? I think you may have lost control of the system over here. Are you there?
Oh, yeah.
You're okay. Don't worry about it. The only thing, I think there's only two things we got to go to, and I can probably,
cool.
I can do those myself. You reconnected already.
There you go.
Look at that. So we have that problem fixed. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
it seems like we're getting we're getting over the technical hurdles around here. Mm-hmm. Curtis Stone is always great. I like the last little piece about, because I do think that that is an important message that I feel like maybe I'm not communicating enough, is the fact that we are living in a time of great abundance.
Absolutely.
And I think that so much of the liberty movement for so long has been rooted in fear, I think. Mm-hmm. And especially the conspiracy theory kind of side of it all has been expecting a crash, has been expecting, the zombie apocalypse, whatever it is, like the survivalist side. And it's interesting that so many of the people who are in that survivalist camp have found so much use for those skills, particularly the kind Curtis Stone is talking about and the kind that he teaches, in a land of abundance, in a world of abundance where they can create and share with others and exchange with others for money. I don't think that we're communicating that abundance mentality enough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's funny listening back to that. Really solidified that for me, that's something that I've left out. I talk about it a lot in my first book, Tao of the Gigolo, and I think what happens is at a certain point, I think I've internalized the idea of abundance so much that it takes that level of like stepping outside, because again, it's like asking, well, what can we do to move this thing forward? And I think that it is a part of it is walking through life with that joy that comes with living in a world of abundance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what gets people to go along with the movement. Like, they want to feel like that's a movement towards a land of abundance. Like, I don't think people want to be in a movement that's just fear-based,
No way. No way. And that's why what Curtis was talking about with the media, that's why that'll all come crashing down. It's got to come crashing down. And it's exciting times. I did find something that I don't know why, but I wanted to mention this on the show. I'm working with a new client right now for marketing, mm-hmm. and she's a quantum like spiritual teacher, mm-hmm. quantum physics and stuff like that. And she said something to me that really she said something that related to this whole episode. And I think it's important because I've been through it as well. And she said basically, you're going to keep moving forward as long as you keep looking inward. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes it feels like we hit roadblocks or we do certain things that we're stuck. But if we keep looking inward, we'll find out how to do that. Instead of looking outward for the solutions, just keep going inward and you'll find it.
Well, that's where you can actually be creative and actually be proactive and productive as opposed to reactive and reductive, really. Like,
right.
It's if you're only reacting to what's happening on the outside, you're never going to have what I guess a quote unquote original thought. It's only when she's right. It's only when you're going inside and being introspective Jordan Peterson, the good in the 12 Rules for Life. I believe if I don't want to butcher this rule, I could probably pull the book down off the shelf and just read it. But I think it's something like compare yourself to what you were yesterday, not what someone else is today.
Ah, yeah.
Which goes right. It goes right to it. It's like, no, look internally to see where you've progressed to and to see where you may need to go, as opposed to looking externally and trying to like keep up with the Joneses, right? Or say, oh, well, this person's got this thing going on, but you don't know. You don't know what's positive and what's negative in their life. You don't. You really don't. You really don't. And it's to say that prosperity is abundant as well. That it's not a zero-sum game. That it's not about, oh, well, I have something and this person doesn't have something and like then that's a zero sum. No, it's like even if you don't have something in this very moment, it doesn't need to be, in order for you to have something, it doesn't need to be taken away from someone else. As a matter of fact, there's so much abundance that you could both have more.
Right.
I think that's something that's missing from a lot of the socialist argument, is that it's like the question becomes, and there's this great video, if people go and look, it was the last little thing in Parliament that Margaret Thatcher did when she left office, and there was this guy who stood up and said, oh, the gap between the richest and the poorest in the time that you've been in office, the gap between the richest and poorest has increased. And she said, well, the living standard of both the richest and the poorest has greatly increased. It's just that the distance between the two has also increased. So you would be for everybody doing worse so long as they were all doing worse together, rather than everybody doing better, but some just do better than others. And I think that that's really the approach of somebody who's looking at abundance. It's like, yeah, we're going to lift up the poorest, but a rising tide raises all boats. So it's like, I can't make the life of the poorest better through technological means, through actually like finding more efficiencies, through providing more abundance, and not make the lives of everybody better. The only you have to be a crazy person to be like, oh, I want the poorest to do better, but so long as the wealthiest don't do better either. Like the only solution that you can implement in that case is to steal from and kill the wealthy. That's all you can do.
Scarcity.
It's scarcity. Abundant. It's like, oh, there's a limited number of resources. It shouldn't be surprising that socialists would think that way, because Karl Marx is already about like seizing the means of production that were created by capitalists. So it's like, well, we can't create the factories, so we just have to wait for the capitalists to make the factories, and then we'll go and steal it. And it's like, you really think if you can't create the factories that you're going to do any good running the factories? Like, should seriously. We trust you to run and maintain this factory if you're unable to build it yourself? I don't know if that's who you want in control of the means of production. But we've seen how it happens. So I think it's super interesting. Curtis Stone is such a great example of, striding that sort of, especially the green movement, which is very kind of socialist. But look, producing for himself and his family and others, able to have the time to go out and teach others how to produce on small pieces of land. It makes me feel so bad because I've got all this land outside of me that it's just growing a lawn right now. It always makes me feel bad that like I'm not doing enough, but I'm doing it in my own way.
Different ways, yeah.
Right? And perhaps it's in the cards for me, or perhaps what's in the cards for me is leasing my land out, like Curtis had, leased other people's lands, leasing it out for very inexpensively to somebody who actually is good at growing. There's always the option there as well, just for a cut of the food and whatnot. So, all right, dude. Well,
great show.
I think we're coming up on it. I am going to go and nap again. I don't know how many days it's going to take me to recover from pork fest, but I guess that's a good thing. You can see I'm tan. I definitely got a good tan, right? So that's positive. It's just going to take me a little while to detox. But thank you, dude. Thank you for today. Let me say goodbye to the people.
Thank you.
So, thank you for tuning in. Yet again, I want to give a huge thank you out to Curtis Stone, our guest. Can't wait to see what's coming next for him. Perhaps I will see him in Anarchapulco. It sounds like he's going to be going and may very well be speaking there, so it would be great to see him talking there as well. I think there needs to be a lot more on sustainable agriculture and development there at Anarchapulco. Perfect place for it. I will be there. I will be going to Free Coast Fest as well in September, so if you didn't make it out to Pork Fest, this one is not camping, and it's pretty cool. You can actually check out Portsmouth, New Hampshire, go and spend some of that crypto in a very, very hip and very cool environment. A little bit of a different setup, a lot more about entrepreneurship, so I would look forward to seeing all of you there as well, all of those who did not come to Pork Fest, or perhaps I'll see you at Pork Fest next year. So we will be back again on Monday. Before that, you can check out our audio archives at activistpost.com and also tune into us on terrestrial satellite and internet radio at lrn.fm. That's the Liberty Radio Network. We'll be back again at 10 a.m. Pacific time next week on Monday. And until then, stay free.